are about to witness the very exciting story that will open new sights in familiar surroundings.
The atomic age was born.
It is a story of a city seeking new horizons in a resolute contest with great challenges.
Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about threats to dirt. There's a great movie called Dirt! The movie. And we're going to see a few minutes of it where it talks about how dirt, which is so important, can actually be destroyed by human activity. Let's see that portion now.
The demand for natural resources has completely changed our relationship with dirt.
This is a fabric of life being torn apart that can never be put back together again.
All around the world, we are destroying dirt in pursuit of the raw materials we consider to be more valuable.
The practice of coal mining is called mountaintop removal. It's strip mining with a vengeance, with equipment, the scale of which is difficult to conceive. Mountains are literally cut off and leveled, and they're being destroyed in the name of cheap electricity. It isn't cheap at all. It's unbelievably expensive. It's the attitude toward nature that says nature is only resources to be used, and not for the benefit of everyone, but for the benefit of a very, very small number of people at a very, very thin slice of time in this human journey. So the coal companies can come in and blast and remove one layer of what they call overburden. The overburden is a boulder field which will have no water table. That will support no vegetation. And the mountaintops, with all the things that are in mountains, the heavy metals of lead, cadmium, selenium, all that now is free to get out into the watershed.
I was born and raised here in Los Angeles in the 1950s. In fact, I was raised in the house right there with the white van in the driveway. Urban intensity, but I got to escape it by hiking up here every day after school. I'd come up with my friends, we would see the animals, the snakes. We'd imagine getting to fish here, hunt, but the smog was devastating. If you look out, you see the vastness of concrete, asphalt, homes, buildings, parking lots, freeways. The city was built and designed and has been managed for over 100 years as a dead piece of inert concrete. We've put all this asphalt on top of living dirt.
We live in this living organism. It's dysfunctional, pathological, but it's a living organism. It's called the flat city. So when you have an area paved with something black, it's going to collect a lot of heat, so you get a very strong heat island effect from building a city like Los Angeles. And then superimposed in this, of course, come the freeways. So the biggest way that the city, as we're building them now, relate to climate change is that they put out massive amounts of CO2.
We took the rivers and encased them in concrete. We paved literally 2/3 of Los Angeles so that now when it does rain, instead of being absorbed by the soil, the water runs off, and it's billions and billions of gallons. The city of Los Angeles itself spends close to $1 billion a year to bring in water from as far away as Wyoming and Utah, all over to bring it here. We don't need to. We have half the water falling here now, but because we've sealed the dirt and sent the water away, 20% of our electricity is to bring water here. So when you turn on the tap, it's a climate change event.
Without healthy dirt, it's difficult to survive extreme climate events like hurricanes, floods, windstorms, and drought.
A large part of Bundelkhand is today suffering from a very extended drought linked to climate change. And this long-term drought has led to crop failure, which has led to starvation.
You create deserts where you are, and eventually these micro deserts form much bigger areas. And we can't live very happily in a desert. And so we start fighting between farming communities and nomadic communities over land that is not a desert, that still has dirt. Desertification or land degradation is one good way of undermining security in any country.
Throughout history, we've seen civilizations rise and fall based on how they treated dirt.
What if we were served a side of truth?
I'll take a super bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich.
Okay, that'll be meat from a pig who can't even turn around, an egg from a bird kept in a cage so small she can't spread her wings, and the milk of a cow whose calf is taken at birth to make veal. Ma'am?
Since 1990, the Gateway Green Alliance has worked on environmental and social justice campaigns in St. Louis.
The Gateway Greens have brought dedicated activists to speak at Black and Green Wednesday programs, the annual Pesto Feast, Martin Luther King Day, May Day, and Kwanzaa celebrations.
The Gateway Green Alliance is best known for opposing genetically contaminated foods. We invite activists and scholars from around the world to participate in safe food action and bring their creative art.
We need your support to keep going. Please send your $60 membership check or your $30 low-income check. Best of all, come to a Black and Green Wednesday program, 7:30 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at Legacy Books and Cafe.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We just saw a few minutes of Dirt, the movie, where we saw about how soil can be destroyed by human activity. With me, I have a couple of guests who have thought quite a bit about soil. I have Teresa Morris, who is a soil ecology with a farming blueprint, and I have Sarah Heyman, who is with the Washington University Cell Biology and Physiology. Did either of you have any comments about that portion of the movie that viewers have seen about the incredible destructiveness of, I think, was it mountaintop removal they were showing, or blowing things up in order to recover, in order to get at coal and things like that? Is that overstating the case of how much it hurts soil?
Yeah. And actually, coal mining is the least of it. It's much, much worse in other parts of the world. We don't experience it much around here because there are mining laws and legislation here, but in other parts of the world, there are huge, vast explosions and strip mines that are completely unregulated.
And Sarah brought up a really good point, sometime when we were talking, that soil takes so long to develop and is such a precious resource and as an ecosystem. So when we destroy that, it has to start all over again. So this is something that's going to take hundreds to thousands to years to get back into a functioning ecosystem if we are going to, put agriculture on it or something like that.
And in the meantime, you can't do anything with it.
You really can't.
It's
very difficult.
You can't. It just, if you've imagined you've now taken what used to be on the bottom and you flipped it, then
it's more like rock and things like that on the bottom.
Well, it's just never been exposed to the air.
Yeah.
It's a completely different chemistry. It's a completely different essential thing. And
Well, what most of us do, okay, there's two ways that I think of two life forms, and it's you know biology a lot better than I do, so it's a lot more complex. But I think of things that you see and things that you don't see. And what we can certainly see in soil when we dig it up is roots.
Yeah.
We see the root system. But then the microorganisms we don't see.
Right.
And so it's both the root systems and the microorganisms. And what is tearing soil up and doing like not just mountaintop removal, but the big discussion now is on tar sands and getting the massive mining operations that are going on in Canada that are just removing enormous quantities of dirt in order to get at the tar sands underneath.
But we don't even have to go as far as Canada to talk about the destruction of soil. We can look right here at all the sprawl that we're doing, the fact that we have taken the floodplains and paved them over.
Yeah.
So now we have floods. I mean, we have floods that used to occur theoretically once every 100 years, occurring once every 10 years.
Yeah.
We have had flood years I think I read somewhere out of the past 15 years, we've had 8 or 9 of them as flood years, which is insane. It's never been this bad, and it's bad. We're getting areas that have been occupied with houses for 100, 150 years, and they've never had flood issues before, and they're now getting flooded. And it's because upstream, we've taken the ability of the soil to absorb stuff like a sponge, particularly this water, like a sponge. We've taken it out and we've paved it over. So all that water, instead of absorbing it like a sponge, now lets it run down like you would just out the gutter.
And the other side of that is now we have extreme droughts. So in my job, last summer, there was drought. I mean, it was decimating.
What does a drought do to soil?
Well, those microorganisms that love to swim in water, they have to leave because they don't have a home anymore. There's nothing in that soil that's feeding them. So they've got to leave. And the first little microorganisms that leave are the worms. And then they start carrying everybody with them because they make the biggest holes and whoever can get out the fastest. Otherwise, they die. And then the life of the soil begins to deteriorate. And then you're walking into desertification things because it's very hard to get that back. So then we start getting erosion. Once you have that, then plants can't get in their roots. They don't have the nutrients. They don't grow well. And then you have your topsoil that's bare. So any kind of water or air or any kind of movement in the climate, the weathering processes can take that away. So, and we're talking a very light, if a 3% slope, you have soil erosion. Because that water molecule and that lovely clay particle we're talking, or the humus, rides on that water molecule. And they can go for miles.
Okay, it would seem to me that there's two processes that just come to me off the top of my head about pavement, getting back to the issue of pavement. One is the water that flows over the pavement is then going to go very rapidly, and it seems like it's going to pick up a lot of soil more quickly and put it into the river and wash off more topsoil. And the other issue is that you have soil that was exposed to air, and a huge amount of soil now is no longer exposed to air because it has a layer of concrete over it. What does that do to soil to have concrete over it for 50, 100, or 200 years?
Well, it's not even just the concrete. In order to lay the concrete, you have to pack the soil down initially. So you take, and by pounding it down so hard, you've closed all these little channels and pores. So you no longer have those spaces in the sponge that can absorb the water or have pockets of air. So things that used to be able to live in there are no longer able to. And even if you remove that heavy stuff before, it's virtually impossible to restore all of those little air pockets all the way down.
You have to start with plants.
So the thing is, if we remove the concrete, we don't have the soil that we started out with. We have something
we can't ever restore it to the way it was. We may be able to restore it somewhat, but we can't get it back to what it was before.
Right.
So
Okay.
your best bet is not to go around doing that.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a break, take a look at another portion of the movie, and then be back in just a few minutes.
The American Midwest was known as the breadbasket of the world. Across the prairies, using modern industrial machinery, farmers removed native grasses to plant a single crop over millions of acres. This seemingly efficient system of farming, called monoculture, worked in the short term, bringing record yields and profits.
Monocultures don't produce more, they produce less. Monocultures produce nothing for the soil. The idea that we are increasing soil fertility and agricultural productivity through industrial monocultures is one of the biggest lies.
What the farmers didn't realize was that they were killing their dirt by destroying its root structure. After years of severe drought, fierce winds picked up whatever remained of the topsoil and just blew it away, leaving the dust bowl in its wake.
The Dust Bowl was an event not quite on the same scale, but getting up to comparable to what happened after the last ice age. We made a really big change in the landscape just by bad farming practices.
A third of our topsoil we've lost in the last 100 years. It's the problem of agriculture. It's the way we do agriculture now.
If you look at the landscapes today, we have millions and millions of hectares of monocultures of one variety. One species, one variety. All these monocultures are actually going to collapse under climate change scenarios, especially in drought situations.
Lo que predomina en este momento es la soja transgénica. En la escala de la provincia de Córdoba, entonces entra a pensar qué está pasando con los suelos de Córdoba.
The more we grow monocultures, the more vulnerable our systems are. So we need to diversify the systems. For example, in the winter here, sometimes we grow broccoli with fava beans. If a frost comes, the broccoli dies, the fava bean remains. It's very resistant to frost. If you have corn and beans and sorghum and a drought comes, the sorghum will remain. Everything else will collapse. So you don't put all the eggs in one basket.
We have this one species planted for miles, and it's a all-you-can-eat restaurant for pests. So once a pest learns to unlock the key and get into one kind of plant, and you've got that plant planted for miles around, it can open every single plant, okay? And so that's how pest epidemics get going, so then we add pesticides.
And those chemicals deplete the life of the soil. They take away the structure of the soil. They take away the water of the soil. They take away the very organisms that make for soil fertility.
Essentially, insects and plants are so like us physiologically, cell to cell, gene to gene, protein to protein, that if it's going to kill plants and if it's going to kill insects, it's going to kill us too.
What this system produces is food empty of nutrients but loaded with toxics. We weren't designed to eat that kind of diet.
The Sierra Club is the largest and most influential grassroots environmental organization in the United States. If you care about clean air, clean water, and preserving open space, join the Sierra Club. In Missouri, the Sierra Club's projects include promoting energy efficiency and clean power sources like wind and solar, cleaning up air pollution by retiring dirty, outdated, coal-fired power plants, protecting Missouri's parks like the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. We need you to get more involved. To join the Sierra Club, make a donation, or to find out about Sierra Club events in your area, visit our website at www.missouri.sierraclub.org or call us at 314-644-1011.
We are the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce, an organization that's creating the business leaders of tomorrow. Catch our new television series, Harambe 101, on Green Time TV. We want to thank all the business professionals who gave up their time mentoring what promises to be the next generation of movers and shakers. You too can help save the future of our underserved communities by supporting the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce with your charitable contributions. And remember, what you give today will help make a brighter future tomorrow.
Send your donations to the JBCC at P.O. Box 35257, St. Louis, Missouri 63135.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We are talking about the threats to dirt, what sort of things can destroy soil that has been building up for hundreds of thousands of years. We just saw a few minutes from the movie Dirt, and with me I have a couple of people who have thought a whole lot about dirt. I have Sarah Heyman, who is with Washington University with cell biology and physiology. And I also have Teresa Morris, who's a soil ecologist with Farming Blueprint. Now, Sarah, we're just talking about TIF financing. Now, what in the world does how you finance your growing your structure in the city, what does that have to do with soil?
Well, we give money to people to go and take valuable land that we could grow crops on or any number of other things, but particularly grow crops. Around here, it's so important. We give people money to go and build houses or big box stores further and further out. And the problem is that not only makes all these different municipalities compete with one another for their tax dollars, which are in limited supply, but it takes the soil that could be doing something else, that could be producing another revenue stream, whether it's used like a park, because I guarantee you Forest Park is a huge capital generator, or a farm, or any number of these other things that we could use it and have it as a bankable, usable resource. It takes it out of there. So in essence, you have this municipality fighting with this municipality. And so it's a minor war about who's going to get to control this soil. And then the older municipalities who are not being included in that area because they don't have lovely open green spaces that are easy to build on, they then have to pay extra to lay in the infrastructures, to lay in the sewer lines, to lay in the water lines, to set the electricity lines, to upkeep the roads. So the established communities now pay for the new communities that are further and further out. So you have extra water runoff, you have the degradation of the soil, because you've now taken it out and smashed it down so you can't use it the way you were able to use it before, and you have air pollution, and you have all these other costs to people who are not living in that newly developed areas, plus you have somebody making a huge profit off of it that isn't necessarily investing it right back here in the areas. So you have these, and you end up with all these difficult situations that have to be untangled. So if you didn't offer that and didn't take these soils out of that sort of use, you wouldn't have that problem to start with, and you wouldn't have to solve these other problems
downstream. There really is a big connection between urban financing and soil destruction. Now, one topic that interests me a lot, that I know that both of you forewarned me, we could talk for hours about, but I think it's very, very important to cover, is when we're farming, when you have a backyard garden, we usually have like 10 or 15 different things in a small area and a variety of root systems. But if you drive out to any of the big farming areas, you'll see miles upon miles of corn or miles upon miles of wheat, and you basically have the same root structure for an enormous area. What does that do to soil to have a monoculture? And
monocultures are big, as everyone, it's a big topic. And the idea is this, and I use monoroots. That's just something I use in my class, because we have monoculture, we have monoroots. What is above is below. So the deal is this, though. Different roots do different jobs in the soil. So some roots, like if you take a corn plant, the roots are very shallow. So there could be nutrients, and there are nutrients in every horizon in the soil. Horizon is basically a taxonomic thing in soil. So there's nutrients, your calcium, your magnesium, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potash. They are in the mineral portion of the soil. So if the roots are up high, they can't get to these nutrients. They can get to some, but they can't get to the abundance of them.
Right.
So if we really want the crop to be really vigor, we need a diversity of roots. So some roots go very long.
Some of them can go 10 or 15 feet down.
Yeah, really long. Yeah, we've dug soil cores down to 80 inches, and there's beautiful roots down there. So where there's roots, there's microorganisms. Where there's microorganisms, you have a carbon. Where you have carbon, you have a nitrogen. You have a nitrogen relationship. So it's very powerful in the soil to do these cycles. So if you cut the roots and you have the same roots, here's another thing that happens. You have a problem with pests. Because the same roots is kind of like the same territory. It's like, oh, I know this territory. There's no diversity that the insects above and even the ones below that can be predators.
So we have predatory organisms underneath the soil. Okay.
Oh, there's a war going on down there. It's very exciting.
So it's a constant struggle between different life forms underneath the earth. And so if we have one crop, what that basically does is one thing that can be destructive to the soil just spreads throughout it.
Right. What roots do is they have exudates. And in a simplest idea, they just kind of emit scents and ooze. And what that does is, the predators know that. So they can come in without having, attackers. It's the same thing above. But if you diversify the scents and the smells and whatnot, things get confused.
Okay. We have less than a minute left. Sarah, is there anything that we haven't covered that you could say in about 15 or 20 seconds?
Yeah, well, the old adage, don't fix it if it ain't broke. Well, you might say it about the soils. Don't muck it up because you can't fix it.
Right. Okay, so the soil actually does a pretty good job of taking care of itself if you don't mess with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Teresa, we only have a few seconds. Is there a word of wisdom you could say in just a few seconds?
A word of wisdom. Appreciate the dirt. Appreciate the soil.
And so it's really something that's valuable for us.
It's very valuable.
I want to thank both of you for coming to this episode of the show. I want to thank our viewers for watching it and urge you to turn in to the next episode of Vision Time.